There may be. If there is, he's not related.
What's his first name, I think?
I had a good friend Weinstein.
Yeah, probably not related. We don't have any relatives down here.
No, it's the same thing that I came here.
It's not Mark, it's what is it? His
Today is May 6, 1997. This is an interview with Mindall Gutman, and the interviewer is Lenore Bienenfeld-Weinstein. The interview takes place in Hollywood, Florida, in the United States, and the language is English. This is the first tape. Today is May 6, 1997. My name is Lenore Bienenfeld-Weinstein. I am conducting an interview with Mindall Gutman, and the interview takes place in Hollywood, Florida, in the United States, and the language is English. Can you please tell me your name?
My name is Mindall Gutman.
Can you spell your name for me?
The first name, M-I-N-D-A-L-L. G-U-T-M-A-N.
What was your given name at birth?
Mandelbaum, Mindall.
Can you spell that?
Mandelbaum, M-A-N-D-E-L-B-A-U-M. Mandelbaum. Did I spell it right?
Did you go by any other names or nicknames?
No.
What is your date of birth?
My date of birth is November 10, 1926.
And how old does that make you today?
70.
What city were you born in?
Warsaw.
What country was?
Poland.
What were your parents' names?
My father's name was Chaim Leibish, Mandelbaum, and my mother's name was Pearl, like Perla.
And her maiden name?
And maiden name was Rohan Schwalb. I'm not going to pronounce it. Spell it.
Can you tell me a little bit about your father?
My father was a very young man at that time when the war broke out. We were 7 children at home. At that time when the war broke out, we were 6. They lost one child in 1939, the youngest of us. And he was a working person, a very good person. He was a politician. He always talked politics. I remember as a child, in the afternoon, they used to come from the neighborhood, from the place we lived. All the men used to come and discuss what's going on in the world. And I remember that they were talking about Hitler, about Chamberlain, about Winston Churchill, and about, what was his name, Roosevelt presidents. They were talking about politics, constant politics.
What was your mother like?
My mother was a quiet woman, small, pretty, and she had 7 kids to take care of. I remember my father used to read the Jewish paper every day. There was a serial like a romance going on, and he used to read it to her. And we were sitting in corner like mouse, sitting there, and we couldn't open the mouth while he was reading to her this. But otherwise, it's just a plain little housewife.
What are the names of your sisters and brothers?
My older sister is Anne. Now she's Anne, but her name is Hannah. My other sister, my second sister, was Masha. She did not survive. I am the 3rd born, so my name is Mindall. After me, there's another sister, Edel, and my brother, Mark, Moshe, and my youngest sister, Riva.
And the youngest?
The youngest died. She was the second youngest, but the youngest died
And what
in
was her name?
1939, Golda.
Did you know any of your grandparents?
Yes, we did not know, we only didn't know one grandfather. I guess he died in the First World War. My mother wasn't even married then, she was a young girl then. And I knew my grandfather, and I remember when he died in 1935.
What was
he
his
died,
name?
Isaac. And my grandmother was Lotta. And the other grandmother was Soraya, which my daughter is named after. Sherry, her name is Sherry now. Soraya.
What was it like growing up in Warsaw before the war?
It was like every place else, I suppose. We were young, we went to school. Winter came and went, and summer came and went. It's just like every place else. We never thought of anything that would ever happen to us. And I remember the day, September 1st, 1939, when the war broke out. We were happy, jumping and dancing in the streets because we weren't supposed to go to school anymore.
Before we talk about the war, I want to just go back to your childhood a little bit. What kind of schooling did you have?
I went to public school. I did not have a chance to finish it all, but I went to public school. And I was happy. I was a good student. With my father, he helped me a lot whenever I did not know. He was like my pal. He took me everywhere because my two older sisters had to go to work or went to work, and I was the third, and I had to take care of the old small ones.
What was the Jewish community like when you were growing up?
I don't really remember about a Jewish community like they have it here. I don't even know. They had clubs, and they went to school, Hebrew schools, but I didn't. I never went to a Hebrew school or any place. And the holidays we went to synagogue. And as a matter of fact, it was actually a synagogue like here. They had a shul and a cemetery, not far from us. And that's where we went to spend for the holidays, high holidays, for any holiday that we came along.
Can you describe what one of the holidays were like in your home?
And the home, nice. We had enough food to eat. And we didn't think of diets or fads like now. We ate what we could. I remember Passover, the Seder, we were small, we fell asleep because they started very late at sundown. And by the time my father was finished, we all were asleep. We never finished the rest of the Seder.
Was your father affiliated with any organizations or movements?
Yes, it was, what is it called? I don't even know. He belonged to a club, to the, let me think what it was, but yes, he had some friends. As a matter of fact, when the war broke out, there's some friends were drafted into the army. And he was sitting we were at my aunt's, she had a radio, and he was sitting and listening when the war started. He was listening to when they were giving the names, who died or who was killed or something like that. And what was that name of the, I can't think of it now.
Before the war, when you were growing up, do you remember any incidents of anti-Semitism that happened to you or your family?
Not me, and not my family. See, I don't look Jewish, and that was an advantage for me. They never knew whether to say, talk to me Jewish or Polish. I knew the Polish language very good, and no, I never had. But of course, we never went anywhere to be exposed about anti-Semitism.
Did you know what was happening in Germany before the war?
No.
Describe to me what it was like the day that war broke out.
Like I said, nobody knew and nobody expected. As a matter of fact, my mother and my father were talking about because they remember the First World War One, and the Germans also about the Germans. The Germans couldn't be bad because the cultural people, and they never did anything to them. And in the First World War, why would they do it now? And that's why my father, as a matter of fact, my father's brother, my uncle, two uncles, and an aunt, they went to Russia. And they asked my father to come along. He said, where? To Russia? I'm not going to Russia. The Germans are better than the Russians. And he wouldn't go. As a matter of fact, the two brothers and the sister survived in Russia. Now, two of them already, the brothers are already dead, but the sister's still in Israel, still alive, but very old. She's old. So.
What did it look like to you as a child when the Nazis came in?
Well, like I said, we did not expect. Nothing was expected that something like that would happen. I remember the first day that they came, they marched into Poland, to Warsaw. We were jumping here in joy that finally the war's over. But the war wasn't over yet. And because my father was killed in September, 2 weeks after the war started. And we didn't know. They were handing out, they were giving out bread for the people, that they were running after them.
What happened to your father?
My father was killed. We don't know how and what. He just left the house, he never came back. As a matter of fact, that was very quiet. There was nothing going on. The Germans weren't there yet. And we didn't know. It was very quiet, and the holidays came about. The Rosh Hashanah came about. And my sisters we left our apartment to go and stay with our aunt, because where we lived, there was a station, a freight station, the trains. So they knew that if the bombs were going to come flying, the first thing they're going to do is throw bombs on the stations and the trains. So we stayed that day, and my father said to my older sister, she said, I'm going to go home and I'll clean up, because we were gone about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I'm going to go and clean up, and then we can go home. Anyway, so she went. She had a boyfriend. So she went with her boyfriend. And my brother, I think, later on he went looking for her also. And the bombardment started. So my father was standing and looking out, and he said, see, over there where I live, there's fire coming. I think everything is on fire there. And when the alarm for the bombardments, they closed the gates. Nobody could go out. And my father, being as a gentle and nice guy, all of a sudden became wild. He started fighting with the janitor to let him out. And they wouldn't let him out. But he pried the gate open and he left, and we never saw him again. We saw him the next day at the cemetery, because they were going around collecting all the dead bodies from the streets. And one of my aunts, which was her sister, went to the cemetery. We couldn't. We waited for over a night, and it was Rosh Hashanah already. And so she went to the cemetery, because they were bringing all the dead bodies to the cemetery. And sure enough, she found him there. He wasn't mutilated, he wasn't hurt in any way. The only thing that was, his forehead was scratched. So we don't know how he died and where he died. because his head was gone, his shoes were gone, his passport was gone, you know, everything. He had some money there, everything was gone, and we buried him in his suit, what he was wearing, in a casket. Not in a casket, in a wooden box, in a mass grave. And the bombs were still flying. That's what I remember.
Then where did your family and you go?
When we went home. We went back home. And right after the Germans marched in, I think after third week of the war, they came into Poland. Went back. We lived there for a while, and like I said, there was a train, the trains were coming and going, so they had coals coming in with coals, you know, that winter was coming. And so we went there to get some wood or coals for the stove to have warmth in the house. I'm not talking a house like this. Our room, that's all. And we went to get, as a matter of fact, we did a foolish thing that time. There were gasolines, you know, tanks of gasoline, and we took some pails of gasoline and we brought it home to sell it for somebody. And that was foolish because, bless you.
Excuse me.
Because it was foolish, because we could have been blown up. And when we were going, my mother and I, all of a sudden we hear a shot coming from somewhere. And sure enough, a guy next to my mother fell and was killed. And then I was jumping from the trains. I was on the train throwing down things for my sisters to pick up, and then I jumped myself. That I was a tomboy. I once found peanuts. They were not even dried yet, you know, sacks of peanuts, maybe 50 pounds or 100 pounds, I don't know how heavy they were, but I grabbed one, but I couldn't carry it. By the time I came home, I had just a little bit, because I lost all the way on the way. Half of it, most of it, that went out. They weren't even dry, they were still fresh. Also, I remember when the war broke out, I had an uncle, my father wasn't alive anymore, and the Germans weren't there yet. The Polish soldiers were there. And we went to a factory that they made, not a factory or whatever. It wasn't a factory, it was a place that they did pickles, sardines, and things. And we went to get some because it was bombarded, and it was a lot of people went to grab the food. And my mother and I were walking, and when I came closer, I saw people with their heads open. You know, the dead people, they were crawling over the dead people. And I said to my mother, I said, no, I'm not going any farther. No, I'm not going to go and crawl over those dead people. So one soldier came over to me, a Polish soldier. He thought that I was Polish. And he started talking to me. And he says to me, what do you want? So I told him I was going to go and get some cans of sardines or cans of pickles or whatever there is to take. And I'm not going to go because there's a lot of dead people lying there. So he says, you know what? I'll give you an idea. If you see somebody carrying 3 cans of pickles, go over and take one. Just take it. And don't worry, I'll protect you. And that's what I did. They didn't say, because they saw that I'm not a Jewish girl, so they were afraid to begin with. So I got finally 3 cans of pickles, big cans, you know, and we went home. So this uncle of mine, When I brought the 3 cans of pickles, put it in the closet and lock the closet. So we won't eat everything all at once. Every day he gave us a pickle or whatever and a piece of bread. Also with bread, when they're handing out bread. I brought in once 10 breads all at once. Back and forth I went. And nobody recognized me. And nobody knew that was on our street where I lived. And nobody knew that I was Jewish. And I brought in bread. I had a hat, a woolen hat, and I changed, every time I went, I changed it in a different position. Of course, we had family, of course, in Warsaw, and they were hungry, like my aunt who found my father at the cemetery. She was over there, and we gave some to them too. We had enough. We had 10 breads and soup. They were handing out soups, warm soup.
How
every
long,
day.
how long were you able to stay at home?
Pardon?
How long were you able to stay in your home?
Not long because I remember 1941 they started talking about the ghetto. There was no ghetto then. And they were starting talking about the ghetto. And they were starting building up those walls, those wires all around us. And we were supposed to leave. We had to leave. And whatever we could to take, we took.
Before they built the ghetto, were there any changes in the laws that went on in your town, in your city?
No, not really, no. It just started when the ghetto started.
Then what happened?
Then what happened, when the poor people, they didn't have much, and there was a ration, we did not get anything, and we had to stay for hours and hours without end to get a piece of bread from the bakeries. And that was before the ghetto. I remember my mother went to get our portion of bread. She came home empty-handed because somebody tore the bread out of her hands when she came home. So we didn't have anything. And I remember the place where we lived, there was a bakery next door. We were lived 13 here, that was 10 or 11, and there was a bakery. And he promised that if nothing is going to happen to him, if the bakery will still be intact, he's going to bake whatever flour he has, bake bread, and give it to the neighborhood. So every day we went there and gave us a bread. He was a Polish guy, wasn't a Jew. There weren't too many Jews where we lived. As a matter of fact, we were living close to a cemetery, a Catholic cemetery, so there weren't too many. And it was about 2 blocks where I went to school. So he gave us as long as he could, he gave us, but then we had to move. They made us move out. And they gave us an apartment on another street in the ghetto, and it was on the third floor, I think. It was the attic, actually.
Who was with you in that apartment?
My mother and my 4 sisters, and my brother, and me, and the 6 of us in one room. And then I become, after that, when they put up the walls and the barbed wire across, and the ghetto became official, I started smuggling. I became a smuggler. So did my sister, my younger sister, and my brother. As a matter of fact, my brother was once caught by Germans. Like we always used to say, somebody up there loves us. He was caught among a whole bunch of kids, and they told them to pull their pants down to see whether they're Jewish or not. And for some reason they didn't see, or they were blinded by somebody. They didn't see that he was circumcised. That's how they could tell us apart. So they told them to pull up their pants and get going home. That's how we survived. I was a smuggler. I went back and forth, in and out of the ghetto and the Aryan side, and nobody knew. And there were streetcars going from one place to the next, going through the ghetto, but it was only Poles that were riding the streetcars. And my mother, and I was on one of those streetcars, and they were handing me a bag with money and to tell me what I should buy next time. That guy that was taking the stuff for me, he bought it from me. I bought it in the Aryan side, and then I brought it to him, and he gave me the money, whatever I need. I mean, whatever it was the cost of it, and plus. And he sold them to the others. A middleman, let's put it this way. He was a middleman, okay? And so one time I was on one of the streetcars, and he saw me, and somebody handed me a bag, with what I should buy. And there was next to me, there was a Volksdeutsch. That was the Polish that touring Germans. That they claimed that they are Germans. He grabbed me by the hand, and he said, "What do you have?" He was talking Polish, not the German. I said, what do you want from me? I don't have nothing. I just saw somebody handed you something in your hand. I said, "No, you must be mistaken. Nobody handed me anything." He grabbed me, he took me down at the station, and he took me to the SS office, to the police, gendarmerie, or whatever. And I said, "Nobody handed me anything. This is a sack," it's all about. It's a sack that my mother put down with the money, and she wrote down what I should buy so I won't forget. They let me go. I was lucky. And my mother, of course, was behind me. I saw her go like this and go like that, and I said, and then I had to go and show her that I am alive, that I'm okay. I went to the gate.
We're coming to the end of the first tape now.